Thank you very much, dear Kusaladevi. Can you hear me well? I'm using my phone tonight, so I cannot see everybody connected. But yeah, I'm at the Buddhist Center building, but I'm talking to you from Abhirati's Community Lounge, mostly because I'm fighting a cold. So I didn't want to be in the shrine room, potentially sharing my bugs, my viruses with everybody that. But yeah, I'm just, for those of you in the shrine room, I'm just in the room above you right now talking. So, and this is the lounge of Avirati community. So Avirati is actually the name of the pure land of the blue Buddha, the Buddha of the East, Akshobhya. And if you look at over my shoulder here, we have a little shrine on the wall with a rupa, or a representation, a statue of Akshobhya. So in a way, it feels a bit intimate to be doing this presentation tonight from here. You know, it's a very sort of precious or dear space for those of us who live here at the center. And yeah, it's something that those of us living here in the community, we want to share with other people in the Sangha. Yeah? So we recently have opened again Avirati, as we are doing with the building in general. You know, open again Avirati and invite people over for dinner. So we hope more and more of you can join us for an evening here at the community. So I'm going to pace myself, I think, today. I have a tendency to speak very fast when I'm delivering talks, but because I'm fighting a cold, I'm probably going to be a bit slower. Yeah, and I was saying before that I feel a bit like my brain is. I was saying this to a friend this morning. My friend is a bit like in intermittent connection. Yeah, so I feel like sometimes I'm in a line of thought, and then it's like the internet connection just falls. Yeah, it's like that other night when all the social media just collapsed. Something like that is happening with my brain. So I might need to take a bit of time just to follow some of the threads of thought that I want to cover tonight with you. Yeah, so really tonight, our intention was to launch the theme for the next few months. Yeah, what we are going to be exploring in the next few months. And I thought it was very important for us, before going into the theme, as it were, of the evening, just to recap a bit what we have done so far in 2021. So when Mandy was doing the announcements, she mentioned this thing about the Puya night. We have this first Puya night here back at the center this Friday after 18 months. Yeah, since the last time that we did it. And it's quite significant, actually, that we are doing more and more of these in-person events. We were remembering recently, Kusala Devi was reminding us that a year ago was when she became the director, the Nottingham Buddhist Center. Yeah. And so it's been a very, a very full-on year, if you want, of different developments. Yeah. And I just want to say something about Kusala Devi, because I've been thinking about this, and we were doing the Metavavana recently, and when you go to the third stage of the Metavavana, you usually think of the person who is neutral. Yeah. But the person who is neutral, not necessarily somebody that you don't feel very attracted to, or sort of rejecting them, strongly. It can be another way that I like to think about the neutral person, is the people that we take for granted. Yeah. And it might be people that are very close to us, are very immediate to us, and very important in our lives. but somehow they become just part of the environment, yeah. And we don't quite realize how important they are actually, yeah. And I'm not saying that that's the case with Kusala Devi, but it's very easy, I think, for somebody like Kusala Devi to become a bit of invisible for us, yeah, because she is so fundamental to what is happening at the center. So I just want to remind ourselves that we have Kusala Devi as the director of the center, and that has made a very, very big difference for us in the last year. Yeah. So a lot of things are developing, and we are in a process of growing because she is leading us, in her role as director of the center, and she has this very beautiful, caring nature. She really cares about people. She really cares about the Nottingham Buddhist Center. I just worked with Kusala Devi during the weekend in this beautiful, very beautiful Sangha weekend retreat in Lockerbrook. And she was holding so much, and I really wanted to support her in that process. Yeah, I think what she can do is unique, really, and it's important. This is just a reminder. It's important that we keep reminding each other of the precious, generous contributions that we give, to the Sangha. And that makes this place so unique and so special, the Nottingham Buddhist Center and the Nottingham Sangha. And something that we did just at the end of 2020 was we were exploring the threefold path. Yeah, we started exploring the threefold path, and we did a series of evenings. Probably some of you remember exploring the ethics, exploring the 5 precepts, and we did something very experimental. Again, this was a suggestion from Kusala Devi, actually. Something very experimental, sort of a bit of a workshop type thing with the precepts. And then at the beginning of the year, that was an opening for us to start the year following that thread, of exploring the threefold path. So at the beginning of the year, we had Chantika and Kemasiri leading a few evenings of meditation, the second limb, of the threefold path, which is a very good time in the year, actually. To it's a very natural tendency during the autumn, winter, just to go inwards. And I think January was very good in that sense. Yeah. And then we move at the end of January. We move into looking at wisdom. Yeah. The whole path of wisdom. And we really wanted to do something of that exploration. Yeah. So we dedicated a few months looking at, in different ways, at wisdom. Yeah. Particularly, we emphasize the whole area of views. Yeah. So how we hold views, what kind of views we hold individually, and we did that through different approaches. So Atabandu led a series of evenings on looking at the whole area of self, identity. I really like the point that was Anthony was making during the Dana Appeal, about self and how we build identity in our daily experience. And Artabandu was looking at that from different angles of the Buddhist tradition. Yeah. And then we had a few people from the Nottingham Sangha and outside the Nottingham Sangha looking at different ways of approaching the whole area of as fixing our experience. Yeah. In different ways. We had even an evening where we're looking at clear thinking. Yeah. It was very interesting. So thoughts, how thoughts determine the way we relate to our own experience. Yeah. So we can sometimes we can make of thoughts a thing. Yeah. We sometimes over-identify with thoughts, with our thinking faculty. Yeah. Just pause there. And something very important is that reminder that we had tonight as well from Kemasiri at the end of the meditation of the body. So the body being the base of our experience. So just to remember that thinking is just an aspect of our experience. Yeah? So ideas is just an aspect, a way in which we can articulate our experience. Yeah? The abstraction, our capacity to abstract ourselves and formulate ideas is just a way of having a human experience, you know? But it's not the only one. And maybe in our society, our condition is to trust that over other experiences. Yeah. So I did a bit of an exploration as well in the spring around something that is called the 5 spiritual faculties, you know, and I'm looking a bit at the need for us to balance our experience a bit. You know, we might have some qualities more developed than others. So it's important that we look at the different ways in which we encounter truth in our lives and how we relate to that, and try to become more and more aware of what are the areas that we need to develop in ourselves. Yeah? So, for example, just to give you a very brief example, in my life, I think I have a very natural tendency towards believing, you know, and sort of a very natural way of trusting, you know, sort of being open and receptive, and I would say, you know, the sort of faith is something that is easy for me to relate to, but thinking not necessarily, sort of a more rational, more intellectual exploration, you know, more sort of rigorous and thorough exploration using logic and using ideas probably is not as strong in myself. So it's something that I have worked with, yeah, in my process of training with the Dharma. And like that, and it's not that one is better than the other. You know, I'm just giving an example of areas that we can develop, you know, when we become conscious and aware of our own capacities, potentialities, and limitations as well. And then we carry on exploring, you know, even beyond that, so some views that we inherit, you know, from our condition, yeah, from our gender conditioning, from our race conditioning, from our cultural conditioning, yeah, tied up with a particular history, for a particular nationality, particular language, yeah. So it's been a very rich exploration, and I think that there's probably the climax, if you want, of that exploration was listening to different people in the Sangha talking about their journeys. So all those elements coming together and seeing that playing out in different individuals' lives. Yeah. So that was a very beautiful period of exploring, showcasing, you know, the diversity of the Nottingham Sangha. So many of the members and other members of the Sangha, and we have even, you know, somebody. A guest speaker, you know, Chandra Prabha, talking about her journey as well. And that's something that we are trying to develop, you know, is that quality of individuality. Yeah? So we come together to practice, to support each other, but at the same time, we are very different individually. So now, at the beginning of October, we just had this beautiful weekend away in Lockerbrook. We have grown in many ways. You know, we have developed this format, this wonderful format that we have. You know, that I'm able to communicate with you. Some of you are in person downstairs here in this building. Some of you are at home. So we have developed this hybrid capacity. You know, we are just about in 2 weeks' time. Kusala Devi and me are going to be leading an introductory course, which is going to be hybrid as well. That's something else that we have developed in this period. Yeah, this whole capacity to communicate online, Yeah, some of you, some of the people in Lockerbie during the weekend, that was their first encounter with the Sangha, because their involvement has been mostly through online, the online format. Yeah, so it's quite something, yeah, to remember that. So I just wanted to remember that. I want to say something else, which is more to do with the content of the evening, but just to remember that, because it's important that we know where we are coming from in order to go deeper. Yeah, and that's what we want to do in the next few months. So the rest of the year, what we want to do is that we want to go a bit more sort of widen our scope. Yeah. So we have explored these more personal journeys. Yeah. So, and we want to look now at maybe at the bigger picture, if you want. Yeah. So how we collectively influence the environment that we are part of. Goodbye, Romy. Take care. And yeah, and that's important. There are a few reflections that I want to do tonight. So the title of the evening and the theme, probably I need a bit of confirmation from the rest of the team, but is Inner Freedom, Boundless Empathy. Yeah, and those are two very important aspects of our journey. So the journey has a quality that is individual. Yeah. Is unique in that sense. Each of us is unique, given even if our lives are very similar to somebody else's life in the Sangha, there are elements that make it unique. Yeah. But we have that other aspect of being in communication with, we are in relation with others. Yeah? So that's the empathy aspect of it. Yeah? So maybe the inner bit and the empathy bit are two aspects that we can easily relate to. We all have a certain level of awareness of our inner life or our inner world. Yeah? We all have a sense of resonating with somebody else's experience, empathy. Maybe what is a bit more challenging is the other two words of that title, freedom and boundless. Yeah? So I want to dwell a bit in that, and then remember a bit the Buddha, and then I'll see if we can have some time for groups, for discussions, and I have some questions that I would like to suggest. So freedom is a word that we use very, very commonly, in our society, in our world. So freedom has many different connotations. We talk in terms of freedom, in terms of our cultures, our societies, freedom from what seems to be oppressive to us. So two movements that came to my mind when I was looking at this, what was socialism, that I have an experience of from my life in Venezuela. So a movement that tries to, an ideology that tries to promote a certain level of freedom in order to create equality in society. Yeah. And the other that I think is very relevant to our time is feminism. Yeah. So is any human being, a belief, conviction that there should be equality between genders, between women and men. So we can think very clearly, of examples. Those are just two examples that came to my mind, but probably you have already some examples in your own minds of movements in our world, in our society that are have as an objective freedom. Yeah, they're fighting for freedom. But in this case, we're talking about inner freedom. Yeah? So this is a bit more subtle. Yeah, it's not in line with any ideology. Yeah? It's more in line with, in a way, we are trying to approach, we're going to try closer to a mystery, yeah, the mystery of our experience. So when do we experience freedom? Yeah. Do you have an experience of freedom in your life? That will be another way of asking the same question. a clear experience of freedom. Recently I did a road trip to the northeast of England, which I really love. I really love that coast, you know, the Northumbrian coast line. And I went all the way to Scotland and back in a weekend. And when I came back, I was describing that to a couple of friends in the Sangha as a sense of freedom, you know, breaking free from something, breaking free from maybe the routine, you know. I have heard this from different people, you know, that after the lockdowns, after this period of the pandemic, starting to travel, yeah, and feeling a sense of recovering something, recovering a freedom, a liberty, you know, to move around. But for me, that freedom also in that road trip, you know, I'm just going to take this as an example, has something to do with participating of sort of a mythical dimension. Yeah. So in my little trip that weekend, I went to Durham Cathedral and to Lindisfarne. Yeah. And that those places are associated with a period of the history of England that I really like. You know, so the whole Anglo-Saxon Viking, you know, saga of the formation of the English character, the English language, you know, which is very interesting. But when I was in Lindisfarne, I went to one of the sort of the edges of the island, being in the sea. You know, the sea is such a being in contact with the elements. The sea is such an expansive, vast being, if you want. And I could see, you know, just in the beach in Lindisfarne, I saw the seals swimming around, you know, and for a moment I had an experience of the world very different to the day-to-day experience that I have, you know. So I was in contact with something completely out of my conventional routine, yeah. And that put me in contact with something else, something beyond, engage possibilities, open up imagination. So I was in contact with something that I couldn't quite pin down. What is it? You know, it's something to do with beauty. It's something to do with possibilities. But I feel like a language gets a bit clumsy here. Yeah. I cannot quite describe what was that I got in contact with. You know. But that was definitely, I could experience very clearly the effects of that. You know, so it was invigorating. It was clarifying. Yeah. It was, in a way, remind me something about the value of life, yeah, the deep value of life, or even I would say now, you know, just thinking top of my head, the universality of the human condition. You know, even beyond human condition, consciousness. Yeah? The universality of consciousness. I felt something in relation to the sea, in relation to the seals swimming in the sea, you know, even the stones, you know, felt like they have something, a particular life to them. Yeah. So freedom, what is the taste of freedom in your lives? Yeah. That might be something to explore in the groups later on. And this leads very well to the next word in this exploration, you know, boundless. Yeah. So probably when we think of our experience, you know, the natural tendency. This is, I'm not criticizing anybody here, you know, but our natural tendency is very quickly to refer to our concerns, our immediate concerns. Yeah. So, for example, when we think of, let's say, impermanence, yeah, it might bring a very clear sense of the passing of time, you know, change, and that might trigger initially a very strong concern about our own lives, you know, what is precious to us, you know. So it might be that initially our response is a bit selfish, yeah? Rather than open us up. What it does is that we get a bit too concerned, too precious, you know, about what is dear to us. And something very important here to remember from the Buddhist teachings, or from the Buddha's teachings, is that the Buddha was quite clear, quite uncompromising and down to earth. Yeah. So the Buddha says very clearly, one of the reflections that we were looking into during the weekend was that how inevitable is that we are going to be separated from what is dear to us. And that's worth thinking, reflecting upon. Yeah. The things that we are very precious about are passing. Yeah. So we have this idea in Buddhism about going for refuge. Yeah. And yeah, we have tendencies. It's natural. It's very natural for our hearts to move in a particular direction. Yeah. I think the expression in English, I was reflecting about this during the weekend. The expression in English is homing instinct. Yeah. So where are naturally our energies going towards? Yeah. Yeah. Probably the big reflections are to do with those who are dear to us, is our children, our parents, our partners. But it might be much more simpler than that. So, for example, tonight, those of you here, you have made a choice. You are here practicing. You are here listening. You are here meeting others. But you probably have made a decision. You are doing something that maybe might be more of a natural tendency, but a bit effortless in your experience. Maybe just watching a film. Maybe that might be more dear to you in the sense of the level of enjoyment. The natural tendency. Another way of talking about this is the gravitational pull. That inertia in our lives, where our energies go naturally. It might be sometimes just a kind of food, comfort food. And we talk about that. Those things that just give us this immediate sense of relief, yeah, of feeling a good feel that might not last long, but is very easy to access. But the problem with that is that it's a bit narrow. Yeah, it's short-living. The Buddha says in the Dhammapada that sensual experience is made of little joys and sorrows. Yeah. So our conditioned experience, our daily experience is made of that, of little joys and sorrows, little disappointments, little frustrations, little moments of relief, love, But what the Buddha is trying to get at is that there is a deeper sense of satisfaction and meaning that we can access, that he himself managed to get in contact with, And that, rather than being narrow, that is boundless. Yeah? It's boundless, it's infinite, if you want. It's a bit like that experience of being in front of the sea. Yeah? You are, it's humbling as well. You are in front of something that is beyond what is conceivable sometimes. Yeah? There's a book from Bhante Sankarchita called The Inconceivable Emancipation. Yeah? Really, the level of freedom that the Buddha is talking about is something that we cannot quite conceive. It's beyond our capacity to think. We need to approach it in different ways. We need to engage different aspects of ourselves. But something very immediate to us is that we are not alone in this effort. Yeah? We are with others. Yeah? So we are talking of boundless empathy. Yeah? So immediately you can see, just looking at your screen, you might see others connected tonight. I'm looking at the moment at the people in the shrine, so I can see already there are 5, 6 people in the screen. Get together, physically together downstairs. So it's good to remember that we can engage our creativity, our powers, to try and understand others, around us. We can get curious about other people's lives and tendencies and conditioning. And that will help us in time to get a bit more curious about ourselves, in a way that is not narrow. Yeah, it's a bit more, it's lighter. Yeah, we can hold our opinions about ourselves better. Yeah, we can be less definitive, conclusive about our thinking. So in this process, these two qualities are very important. Something that we are going to be looking in the next few weeks is, how that sense of finding meaning in our lives put us in contact with other people, that are not necessarily Buddhists, that are not necessarily following, a spiritual or religious path, but might be in the same quest, that we are for meaning. Yeah. And we're going to be looking at different things. So immediately, what comes to mind is that next week we'll have Kemasiri talking about a very important movement within the Buddhist tradition and the world in general. There is the mass conversions in India, when a large group of people from the Indian society decided to change religion, and that single act, converting into Buddhism, represented freedom for them, a radical movement towards freedom in their life. So Kemasiri will be leading us into a recollection of that next week. But I'm not going to talk about that much tonight. What I want to talk tonight is about, in a way, what I want to bring is just a very seminal, fundamental reflection about our own capacity in those two tendencies. So Sangha refers to these two tendencies. He talks about them in terms of a creative tension. A creative tension that is necessary in our lives. So that tendency to go inwards, to look a bit more into our own experience, into our own feelings, emotions, thoughts, and that other tendency that is moving towards the others, reaching out, serving, if you want to use that. That was something that Anthony was getting at in that Dana appeal, that sense of, okay, you go beyond your narrow identity and you try to establish something bigger. Yeah, you can do that with others. And that's a very important tension to hold in our lives. It's a creative tension. And sometimes might be conflicting. It's not. You don't have an easy answer when you are holding that tension. So sometimes you want to get comfortable. Yeah, you want to just shut down. It's very easy, for example, if you try to get involved with a big cause in your life, let's say in social injustice, environmental crisis. Yeah? Sometimes the situation looks so big that it can be a kind of overwhelming and even undermining. Yeah? If you think that it's just up to you individually to try to solve that. So it's important that you remember that when we engage with the world, we don't do it in an individualistic mode. We need to engage in with the world and with others. Calling upon the support, the influence of our friends, basically. Yeah. So I want to suggest that we explore a couple of things. What stops us from acting, and what inspires us to act. So again, those two aspects of our experience can get limited by our reactivity. There are things that stop us, that freeze us. We might feel fear, for example, fear of losing stability, losing material things, losing status, losing recognition, losing respect, being criticized. Yeah. Sometimes when we stand our ground, we need to be ready to be alone, and that can be very scary. Yeah. That might stop us from acting, that sense of being alone in relation to others. But it might be that, on the other hand, we have something that is very inspiring, that moves us to act. And I would like to, the last few minutes of this, before we go into the groups, I would like to just think of a bit of the Buddha. Yeah. So in the same way that I was recollecting what we have done this year, I would like to remember what the Buddha did. Yeah. So going back 2,500 years to the north of India, what is today India. Yeah. And we encountered this man who was troubled, yeah, with this problem, the problem of the human condition, the problem of old age, illness, and death. But he was inspired by something. Yeah, he was inspired by the thirst for truth, if you want. If you want, he wanted to have a real answer, an answer that is in line with reality, and this reality is reality with capital R. Yeah. So when he found his answer, he understood more deeply the value of life. Yeah. But in a way, that led to him becoming a bit, that understanding helped the Buddha to be more empathetic with others. Yeah. So kinder, yeah, helpful, supportive of others. There are many examples of encounters between the Buddha and people that were suffering, and the Buddha being able to meet the suffering of those people. Probably one of the most beautiful encounters is that of Kisa Gotami, this woman that lost her baby, newly born child, and the Buddha being able to talk to her in a way that she could understand, that was meeting her suffering. So we need to have the capacity of meeting the suffering in the world in the terms that they are happening. Yeah. So not talking to somebody, not talking to somebody about a homeless person, for example, in terms that are dismissive or what's the word? Not taking into account, what their situation is. So we need to meet the humanity first before we launch into, sort of a wisdom, a borrowed wisdom, really, because it's not so many times it's not really our wisdom that we are communicating. I remember an example. I don't know if this was a real example, but this was a bit of I don't know, a gossip, I suppose. That was in Windhorse. I'm going to repeat a gossip now, but somebody dying, and a Buddhist sending a letter to their family, sort of not a letter, sorry, a card, sort of a condolences card, and writing in the card something like, "Everything is impermanent." Yeah? And there's something there about, yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, everything is impermanent, but when you are just using words, to communicate something, it can be cruel. Yeah? You need to take into account, you need to make that connection, that empathic connection with the situation of others, rather than just being around, going around giving advice. So the Buddha didn't do that. The Buddha connected with the person that he was talking to. So, and he was trying to go beyond the assumptions of his time. So the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha weren't about beliefs. It was nothing to do with all the gods and goddesses and deities that were prevalent in the India of his time, or the northern India of his time. he wasn't over concerned about mystical experiences um, as ends in themselves, and that he wasn't trying to give initiations, into mantras and visualization practice. His advice was very clear, always. So we hope that in this series that we're going to be leading in the next few weeks, we can find that clarity, in your lives, and that you can trust more and more deeply your wisdom, and the wisdom of the sages, the sages of the past and the sages of the present, and just to evoke a bit of that boundless dimension, that being in contact with something that is mysterious. I'm going to read a poem and finish with this before we go into the groups. A poem from Bante, that I had this beautiful experience as well during the weekend in Lockbrook on Sunday morning after the first meditation. I went for a walk in Miami, and the wind was blowing very strongly. So again, like the sea, sometimes you get in contact with the elements. They show you something that is beyond your immediate experience. What your conventional experience is. And there is a poem from Bante called The Wind. So I'll finish with this. A wind was in my sails. It blew stronger and fiercer hour by hour. I didn't know from whence it came or why. I only knew its power. Sometimes it dashed me on the rocks. Sometimes it spun me round and round. Sometimes I laughed aloud for joy. Sometimes I felt a peace profound. It drove me on that manic wind. When I was young, it drives me still. Now I am old. It lives in me. Its breath, my breath. Its will, my will. Thank you.